And so there's always like a deeply rooted traumatic experience that can get stored in the body. And the cool thing is that we can always reorganize what is possible from the unconscious, the deep unconscious of who we are, and we're moving that into the conscious mind.
Yeah.
What does that really mean, right? And is it based on time and space? I've went through a lot of different, moments in my life where I've had to like rapidly, and radically reorganize who I was.
I can't do it anymore. I can't do it. Like, I can't kill bugs. I can't do any of that kind of stuff anymore. It drives me nuts. I literally started a greenhouse in the backyard. I don't know if you see the banana tree.
This is where we start getting into like some really like philosophical concepts and ideas of like time and like space and like, like calculus 3 and like, since you're in school, like it's like these topics of physics and mathematics and how it relates to dance and song and ecstasy.
Start talking, because I find that to be much more authentic than I used to do, like this whole intro and stuff, but just like having the conversation really, so I just want to keep it authentic to that. But I do want to drop in your credentials because I was reading your books and I was like, oh, this man this man don't play. But today we're talking with Dr. Evan Johnson. He's obviously a doctor, a multiple author. I don't know if you have more than 3 books, but I think so, right? Because I saw a couple inside the other books. I know Conscious, I wrote one of them down. Conscious Communications was one I didn't see on Amazon, but I know that's a book you're writing, which I was interested in. And then Public Speaking, Founder, and CEO. So I'm not even sure how those two come together, but so you found it and then you become the CEO, right? That's how it would work, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, it's all, like these labels, these names that we give ourselves as like business owners. I think they mostly just have a certain energy behind them, just like doctor, just like author, just like speaker. Yeah, I'm not sure where you saw that, but maybe at that time I was just feeling like super amped up and I was like, yeah, founder and CEO. And I just like put it on there. Like, I'm not sure like where that was, but yeah, maybe I was just like in it and I was just like, yeah, this is it. And this is how I'm like, showing up in the world. So I don't know.
Yeah. And I'm glad you stepped into that though, because you are a founder. You just founded a group today. I was actually right before this. I was checking it out and reading through that. I'm excited. Hopefully, I can join. I have class on Monday, but I'm looking forward to at least getting on a couple of those. So I'm really interested by your work. So I'll just start asking questions because that's where I find my most authentic spot pops out, and that's where I find I can bring people's authenticity out. So I read I love this so much, from The Beginner's Guide to Utopian Medicine. Now, chapter 2 is psychology a real thing? Now, I didn't read the whole chapter, but I read that line and that was the first note I wrote down because I often think to myself, I wonder if this thing that I have come to know as myself is even real. And I mean, I have my own answers about it, which is why I gravitated, and I think you can guess. But what is that for you? Tell me what you're thinking when you wrote that.
Yeah, that's a good question. And yeah, thank you so much for diving into the books. That means a lot to me. It's, 3 big passion projects of mine. And we can dive into that later. But yeah, I mean, like psychology, just the concept of psychology, my background is in chiropractic. And before I got my degree in chiropractic and became, a doctor of chiropractic, I got my bachelor's degree in psychology. And I learned so much, about the human brain and the mind and the nervous system and a lot of what thought leaders have said for centuries, and how that infuses into philosophical ideas about life and who we are and how we show up in the world, which, is what, modern day epigenetics is talking a lot about right now. And I learned a lot of stuff in the field of psychology that I just didn't resonate with. And it just it just didn't feel good to me to view people with psychological dis-ease, like there was something wrong with them, or like the whole DSM-5, in my opinion, is full of just language that doesn't really hold a space for people to authentically express and become, and let alone find new ways of thinking and feeling and being, because it puts them in such a box and it labels them based on some certain like disorder or dis-ease, or when really, like, if you really break it down to it, like, there's nothing wrong with anything that comes through a human being, or any aspect of this human existence. Like, I want to talk about wholeness. I want to talk about like wholeness, like that is healing, helping people recognize that they're already whole. And especially with people with, psychological disorders, like,
Right.
what if instead of labeling people or creating frameworks to like suppress these things that their innate intelligence is doing for some reason, right? The body does the right thing at the right time for the right reason. What if instead of suppressing these things, what if we created spaces for these people to actually discover like what it is that they're working through, or what it is that's going on internally, like X-Men or something. It's like a training ground of these people with like special characteristics, which actually these people might be super tuned in to the bigness of life, and their nervous system, and the subtle aspects of what it means to be a human. So I'm super passionate about like rewriting the entire paradigm of mental health and utopian medicine. The book that I wrote, that's what it's about. That's what it's about. It's rewriting those paradigms and the language and the systems around mental health, and how we can change it to help people become more empowered, in what they're experiencing.
Yeah. No, I resonated with a lot of that because I mean I've had my own experiences with psilocybin, and that's what really had me questioning. I was like, wait a minute. I was like, wait 1 second. And it was an inner experience. I mean, I was like on a personal development kick, and I was like, if Alan Watts, if all these gentlemen like Joseph Kant, all these people I respected and had great ideas and books and careers, and people listened to them for years, right? And not to just say it's from psychedelics. That was just personally where I started to question the whole. And then going to school, like you said like wholeness, and I get what people. I don't. It's hard to hear what you're saying when you say that for people who haven't had the experiences. I think, but I fully get you when you say like. For me, it was like I try to use the Michelangelo example where he talks about I just remove what's unnecessary to bring out the sculpture, and I think that's a really easy thing for people to understand. But the way you said it there was that's like the deep dive of that, and I loved that because I honestly I don't know if psychology is real in terms of like because I'm in a cognitive philosophy of cognitive neuroscience right now, and we don't have any idea. Like we really don't have any idea. Like
Mhm.
we know what's going on in the brain, but we just don't know what's going on in terms of the interactions. We're just not there with yet with the science really. But I think in the future, ideas like yours will be the mainframe for how we look at health, and it won't be like you go to this doctor here. You have a doctor like Dr. Evan Johnson, who you go to him and say, hey, I need some. I don't know what the heck's going on, but it takes those. And the reason I really like diving into this is because, like you said, the body does the right thing for the right reason at the right time. And my first thought was, okay, what about a bad thought? And then I realized from my perspective, that's probably just some repressed trauma or repressed this or that or bad habit pattern you got from somebody, right? And your body's like, whether it, and this, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like for me, when I have like a negative thought, right? And I'm like, it's not about the whether I do it or not, it's what I do with it in here. And that's where the change was for me, is where it's like you're identifying with that like something I keep telling myself really recently, actually today at school. I won't name the reason because it's a little embarrassing, but I tell myself you're not attached to the result. It's okay. That's okay. You're not attached to the result, whether you see that person again or you never. And that's just a random example, but I don't know if you kind of get what I'm saying with that, but I think that made me really think like, wow, that's the body saying, I don't know what you're gonna do about it, but I know that I feel some type of way about it, and that's what this big thing's for in your head. So figure it out.
Yeah, super powerful. I'm happy you touched on psilocybin. Psychedelics are excellent tools,
Yeah.
to just open the gateway, right, to the different dimensions of life, the
Yep.
different aspects of who we are and how we show up in the world. And if psychedelics, they're a great way to open up that gateway just long enough for people to discover that, like, oh, something new is possible.
Right.
Oh, I don't need to operate from the same thoughts and ideas and beliefs about who
Yeah.
I show, like how I show up in the world. And that's super powerful. And there's a lot of great things happening in the world in terms of, psychedelic research with maps and
Yep.
decriminalized nature, and all these people that are, showing like how psychedelics and, you know, regardless of how people view them, like they are plants, you know, from the earth. And for that reason, maybe there's something deeper there that we need to take a look at as a humanity.
Yeah.
And it's super true, you know, the body is always recording information. You know, it's a receptor of information, and all this information gets stored in the brain, right? So we can say that our brain has a map of every single experience we've ever had. And to be fully conscious of the body and where the body is in time and space, and all the energy centers and everything that's happening, you know, on the internal level, would mean that someone is also fully conscious of all the thoughts that are correlated to the body, right? And so when we start a healing process, yes, sometimes it's like a deeply rooted, like, oh, whoa, like this trigger is actually like an inner child trauma from, you know, a mother or a father of, you know, not being emotionally supported or not feeling seen and witnessed, you know, in our powers. And so there's always like a deeply rooted traumatic experience that can get stored in the body. And the cool thing is that we can always reorganize what is possible from the inside out, and condition the body to a new mind. And in that process, we liberate energy from the body, you know, and that's healing. And in that process, we step back into wholeness, into a remembering of like, oh, whoa, like, wow, this is always just like a reflection of me, and this work that I can do on myself is infinite, you know, and it's always going to lead us to something new or some different, you know, aspect of life. And that's the beauty behind it, because the work doesn't stop. And what an honor, you know, to do this work and to be conscious of these things.
Right.
You know, I remember there was a point in time when I wasn't conscious of this stuff, and I was like, what does this even mean? You know, and over the years, you know, discovering, oh, whoa, this is like how these experiences are locked into my nervous system.
Right.
And discovering how I can fire and wire new pathways in my brain and in my body to become something new, you know? So it's a beautiful process. And yeah, psychedelics are one way to get there. And like, I don't know, like what's next in terms of cognitive neuroscience or psychology. You know, no matter what we do, we always reach a point in science where like scientists are like, we don't know.
Yeah.
Like, we don't know what's next, but like this is happening, and this is like, these are the changes that people are seeing in their life. So like, why are we not continuing that, and then letting science catch up to us, you know, rather than like needing science to prove something. Like quantum physics, you know, in my opinion, is really pushing this vision, but still, like, there's still moments when we're like, we don't know.
Yeah.
So that's where the power of belief really comes in. And yeah, I love exploring this stuff. And so
yeah, me too. That's why I was excited to have. You were like, "Let's do a podcast." I was like, "Yes, let's do that."
yeah.
Just because I just wanted to have the conversation because I knew you would have some juice. Being conscious with technology. That's the next note I have. That's an interesting. We can kind of save that because I had a great thought, and you just had so many little gems in there that I was picking them all up, and I got too many, and my basket broke. But I really resonate with what you're saying, like just in general with the whole. We just have to be more conscious of connection, really, connection with our family and the past, and how that deals with like it. That's what I'm talking about in my talk, or at least working over in my idea talk. Is like connecting back with that. I call it Wolf Boy. Is what my family used to call me. I'd run around in my underwear and climb trees and be crazy.
Wolf Boy?
Yeah.
Wolf Boy.
Yeah, it was great. Oh! Literally, yeah. Literally. Yeah, literally. I'm gonna howl in my talk. I'm excited for it. But from that perspective, like that's the place where I found myself starting to build this thing that I had to deal with and fix. And I just realized in an encapsulation, maybe at another time we can talk about the whole deep dive of that, because it was a 6 gram, 6 hour. It was a great time. In terms of growth, it was a great time.
Yeah.
but man, it's just all juice there. Like it can definitely. It's just the perspective. It's like you're a tick dug in, and someone pulls you out, and you're like, oh, wait a minute. Or like it's Plato's cave. That's what I think. That's how I feel about it. It's Plato's allegory. But without harping on the psychedelics forever because I will literally do it forever. But we can maybe do another one just centered around that if that's something you're interested in. I didn't want to like bring it up and push it because it's a touchy thing for a lot of people still. But to your point, it's it's so evident that it's useful. It's just like guys, like guys, like I've never had like traditional psychology or any of that kind of like support or help, or and maybe I do need it, but but that experience alone was like my whole lifetime of trauma. I was just like, I get it now, everything's fine, and it took time to really deal with it, but it was all right here, and I was shaking hands with the old me's and bidding them adieu, so to speak, and that without that tool, my ego would have had complete control, and we would have never dealt with it. We would have even thought about dealing with it, right? So yeah, I really enjoyed that, and we'll talk about the juice later, perhaps.
Yeah, I mean, psychedelics are like in with everything in life. It's all about the intention.
That's a
So
great point.
It's like we can have any experience. We can have and again, if we want to talk about like a psychedelic experience, like really anything that's gonna collapse time and space enough for people to like
Yeah,
see like new possibilities and reorganize what is possible.
yeah,
In my perspective. And so this can happen with a cold shower. This can happen in breath work. This can happen with speaking on a stage. Like, who knows what's going to happen when we hop on that TEDx stage. Like, something's going to be coming through us, and it's not going to be us. It's going to be something bigger. And so like psychedelics, like with the intention, it's super important, because I imagine that the intention is like the direction that we point this experience, and whatever emotions we come up with are like the charge behind this direction that's going to propel the experience in that way, right? So with the emotions, the elevated emotions, and with the intentions, like we can do that with meditations. We can do that with psychedelic experiences. We can do that, while we're cooking dinner. Like I like to just say that, like, again, psychedelics are one way to do this, and depending on who you ask, like they might be the only way, or they might be like completely the wrong way. But I don't think it really matters. I think as long as people are living in an intentional space, like this medicine is so powerful. And 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 that's all that matters, I think. In my opinion, it's like the intention. What is the emotion? Like, why is someone doing this, and are they open enough to receive whatever wisdom or intelligence or guidance comes from it? Because that can be tough, right? Because,
definitely,
especially if it's around healing, because the key to healing is feeling, and sometimes healing can be super uncomfortable.
A lot of times I feel like
a lot of times, especially when people like aren't willing to go there. And so I just want to say, like, for this audience and anybody listening online, like, I just want people to respect themselves and understand that, like, we're not really like pioneering this space of psychedelics. But what I do want to pioneer is like helping people realize that they can live an intentional life, and that they can always rewrite their story and rewrite what is possible, if they really want to. And so that's what I'm really passionate about.
I think that's exactly what I was trying to say. I haven't had enough of the conversation, and I'm a philosopher, so that's why I don't bring it up, because I'll talk about it I'll be like, what do you think this was? And, well, what's the brain? But I will ask you this question, because you have a psychological background in accreditation. When it comes to, and it's to my understanding, like with psilocybin specifically, because I was curious about, there was portions of it which I didn't understand, mainly because I would basically lose space and time, where I would be on the couch here and then I would be on the couch here, and I was just like, wait a minute. But I found out that what psilocybin actually does is it inhibits your short-term memory to a heightened degree, which is what removes that element of, in my opinion, and I don't know if you can confirm this, but that mixed with the heightened emotions. Because I think, to your point, that the cold shower, I thought, oh yeah, that would work. That would work if you were open enough to it working, right? Because I'm really looking for the linchpin of the experience, right? Because I don't want to just say, like, go take mushrooms by any means, because the intention is extremely important, and that's why I prefaced it with, mine was like I wanted to get some personal development out, and it was like, okay, do you really? And I was like, yeah, sure. And it was like, I was like, whoa, but it worked, but it only worked because, to your point, my intention was, I want this to heal me, right? That was literally my intention in an offhand way, right? But I really appreciate you sharing that, because it cleared me up a little bit too. I think that And to the question I asked, I wonder if you've heard anything about that. I guess because it's an interesting concept, right? And like it really tied it into where like I was feeling the displacement of and not like remembering moving there. It wasn't anything crazy. It was just couch to couch or something.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I'm not sure. It's really difficult to say like exactly what you experienced.
Right.
And like if we dive into like what that really means is like, okay, when the gateway of the subconscious mind really opens, and we're taking things from the conscious, from the unconscious,
Right.
the deep unconscious of who we are, and we're moving that into the conscious mind.
Yeah.
What does that really mean, right? And is it based on time and space? And Eckhart Tolle, if you ask him, and we talk about like there's no past, it's just like
Yeah.
imprints in our consciousness, memories or images that we've had, and for some reason they're still integrated into our nervous system, but really they're not happening here and now.
Yeah.
And there's no future,
Yeah.
it's just like a projection of what is possible based on past experiences. So there really is like only here and now. And so for some reason, like I'm not sure, maybe there was something that was like coming through for you in those moments of like you said, moving from one couch to another couch, like that needed to come through your awareness to get you to a new spot, in time and space. And at the like tiniest level, like it's just a bunch of moments, the moments that are happening. And again, in my book, I talk about Alzheimer's and dementia and like these so-called disorders that deal with memory and the brain and the nervous system in that way. And really, like, what if actually like these people are just so present that they don't remember, they don't have any recollection of the past. Maybe they've just gotten so old and so like in tune with what's happening right now, right, for whatever reason. Because if the body is doing the right thing at the right time for the right reason, then like why is that like so wrong, for people to be so present that they don't remember things, or they don't like recall things that have happened. And I'm not saying it's one way or the other. I just like to talk about this because I like to think I have a phenomenal memory. So I'm not sure what it's like to have something like that happen. And like I feel like sometimes society like degrades people for
they're
these,
not as valuable. Can't
for
make
these
any money
diseases.
off of them because they can't think
Right.
anymore.
And
Can't do that
yeah,
practical linear thinking that we all value as the master conscious of the world.
right. And this whole thing called life, it's not linear. It's dimensional. And when the gateways of dimension open, just like our friend Dr. Joe Dispenza says, like, watch out, because we'll never return. Once people see what is possible, once people see what's possible, it's really hard to go back to an old way of thinking.
I was getting a visual, like when you said that. It's almost like I pictured like a door back here. It opens, but it never closes, right? And you're kind of linked. That's like a woo way to say it. But to your point, I went to a couple weeks ago. We had someone on campus. Her name was Sarah Robbins, and she talked about how in Alzheimer's, what happens is it's not so much that the memory's lost, but the physical like protein structure, and I could be getting this all wrong, but whatever mechanism that actually fires the memory and puts it together is just like atrophy basically from being old.
Yeah, it's usually like a buildup of amyloid proteins in the brain.
Right. I don't know.
Yeah.
Words, but you said that, and I was like, oh. Yeah. But I thought that was really interesting because we think of it as like you're losing these memories, but really your body is just it's like, and I say this with a grain of salt because it's like a personal thing, but when you were just wrapping that up, I almost thought to myself, what if that's almost like a gift, right? And I know you thought you listen to Ram Dass. I feel like I saw you.
Yeah.
You know about his stroke and how he always said that was a blessing. And the more and more I search into philosophy and physics and understand what he's saying there, I almost feel like what a blessing if you're ready to let go. What a blessing that your body has that built-in mechanism, like you say, to do the right thing at the right time to let you let go of this memory bundle. Do you listen to Jiddu Krishnamurti at all?
No, I don't know who that is.
he wasn't in the psychedelic world so much, but he was like with those guys. It's really interesting. He was, without going into a story, basically it was called the Theological Society. It picked this Indian boy up. He was supposed to have the perfect karmic body, right? Which I don't know what that means. It was just back in the 1900s. You could, if you had money, you could be a spiritual teacher, right, and say what you wanted. But they basically primed him and made him this like intellectual powerhouse from age 12, and then at 25 he comes on stage, and the first thing he says, they're like, "There's the world teacher. He's the teacher of the world." And his first quote, the first thing he says is, "I'm not a world teacher. I'll never be a world teacher. There is no world teacher." And he just, his whole life, the rest of that, all he did was talk. He referenced himself as the speaker. Like he's a really interesting guy, but he talks about ending conflict. And I think he's talking exactly about what we're talking about now, is when you stop separating, like, because you have to separate to have a memory in general, right? When you stop separating, you stop the conflict of, like, if you were to say, "Hey, Brad, I've got $100. We can both have some of it. How much do you want?" My instant ego conflict is like, well, I should probably deserve 60, right? And that's just an arbitrary example, but he talks about ending that conflict where it's because, and for me, it's the same way, right? I don't see myself as separate in so much as what I do is going to be separate from what's going to happen to you, or in the backlash of that, right? So from that perspective, what he's saying is the $100 is ours, right? He talks about a lot about, and I think you'll enjoy his work, which is why I bring him up. He talks a lot about suffering and how suffering isn't yours or mine. It's this, he says, "I wonder if you see this." He's an old Indian guy. "I wonder if you see this." And he talks about suffering being like it's humanity's. Humanity has suffering, and we all package it and call it our own, and that's the conflict. But reality, it's just human suffering. It's not. And when you, to your point, when you key into that and the doors open, you feel that, and it's a change in your personality to where you can't go back to being that collecting. I don't want to use the word ego too much because it's like an esoteric thing for people who don't study psychology or anything like that. But basically, you fall into that trap. But I think I've read that horse long enough. But I really like it. I really enjoy like fleshing out these concepts. I thought about positive psychology a lot because someone had just sent it to me when I was reading your work. And you said the future of medicine, chapter 9 and 10, the future of medicine and creating a better life. And I was like, oh, you're a positive psychologist. I was like, eudaimonia, let's go. That's me, philosophy. So is that something that you like? Do you study that at all? Just curious if that's something you're interested in, or because I don't really know about it much. I just know that I enjoyed the Wikipedia page about it that I read last night.
Yeah. Positive psychology?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, positive psychology, I would say my first introduction into like what that really meant was I was in chiropractic school, and I had just went through like a terrible breakup, and I was really in a dark space, really healing a lot of trauma and self-worth issues, and these deeply rooted beliefs on like who I am and what it means to be a conscious man in society. And I got invited to this like breakthrough seminar, and it was my first introduction into affirmations and like what affirmations mean, and like the power of affirmations. And so I started to like get introduced into that world and like utilize affirmations to like, regardless of what I was like feeling that day, I knew I could take my little note cards out and scream these note cards to myself. Yeah. And I knew no matter what was going on, I could just like scream these note cards to myself, and completely, like, by the end of this stack of note cards, I see you got a pretty good stack there. Like by the end of this like stack of note cards, I was a completely new person. And I had, like we talked about earlier, liberated any stagnant energy from my body, and I'd become something new.
You talked about that in your book. I wonder if like building that habit from childhood, it's such a powerful thing. I was like, man, no wonder he's this positive, because you had the foundation in there the whole time, the juice. All you had to do is squeeze it, baby. Yeah. Your dad must have been awesome, man. My dad.
Yeah, my dad used to put quotes all over my house. Man, he like Zig Ziglar,
I love Zig.
John Wooden, just people in my dad's time, like right. I played basketball and I played basketball my whole life. I was a 2-sport athlete in college, and my dad played basketball and baseball in college. And so sports and athletics and like motivation inspiration were always a part of our life. And he would put posters all over our house, and I would just be sitting there in the bathroom reading this poster, and I would memorize these posters, and I'm like, yeah, and I would live from this space. And I didn't really know what it meant at the time.
Right.
I just knew that like when I saw them and read them and really connected to them, I showed up differently, and so, yeah, I'm super grateful for my father and my mother for like doing these things that like, yes, like there's like inner child trauma, but like actually my parents were badass, and I'm so grateful for them too,
Right.
because they really helped me and supported me and paved like a really clear path in my brain, all these networks of like positive psychology and motivation and inspiration. So I'm really grateful for that.
Yeah. You see, that's the interesting thing about, and this is where I was leading the conversation a little bit, is to all of the points involved, the psychedelics, whatever technique you use, meditation, because I meditate now. I haven't done psychedelics since. My mentor Alan Watts, he says once you get the message, it's best to hang up the phone. I'd say I got it that time, so I almost feel like it would be mad at me. I don't know if that makes sense to you, but like it's because I know what I'm supposed to do now. It's like go reduce suffering to the maximum degree to the best of your ability with your skills, blah blah blah. So I took the journey and have been there, but I wonder if it's. So I think the journey, if you were to give someone a hero's journey, right, in a practical psychological terms, I'm thinking along the lines of our conversation. Hopefully, you start with a good positive center like you did with your family and the quotes and all that. But if you don't, and you start with like a inner city, never met my father, my mother's on this or that, like some really degraded social situation where you don't have control and you can't really take control, and now you're 20 and you've got all these terrible habits. I wonder if this is the key, what we're talking about, to start building the positive ones. If you don't have, can you offer any insight on that? Like if I was 20 and I was like really ready to change my life or whatever, age 50, 60, right? It is possible, and we're both walking testaments to that you can rewire that, right? You rewire it with, I don't know if you listen to Tony Robbins at all, but I've been studying his incantations and anchors a lot, and I really love that, how, like, I got one for school where I listened to some old Cowboy Bebop Lofi, and then it starts off, and he's like, what's cooking? From the first episode, and I just love it. He's like, special, but it instantly, the second I hear it, I'm like, okay, it's time to go to work. It's time to get some homework done. Like, and I can smell the old concrete library, you know what I mean? It really anchored that, because I was like, I'm going to have to step it up, because I went from community college to a 4-year, and I'm like, I'm going to have to step it up. This requires more reading, etc. And so I wonder, do you have anything like that in your life? Like, do you do any anchors or anything like that?
Yeah, now it's I've went through a lot of different moments in my life where I've had to like rapidly and radically reorganize who I was and create entirely new routines. About 3 years ago, I was essentially homeless. I had no money, no food, no connection to the outside world. I had no cell phone service. I was just sitting on the earth, like in the middle of Hawaii, like crying and screaming to the earth, like, what is next? Like please, God or the universe or someone, like show me a sign that I'm here to like show up and serve big, and then there's more to come, and that I'm here to make a lot of money while I do it. And in that moment, I felt this energy inside of me that was just like, oh, and it just raised me up from the earth, like I was being breathed by the earth, and I knew there was more to come. And so in that moment, it wasn't so much about like an anchor or a routine or the breath work or the yoga. I was completely naked in all that I was, and I like to say, like, who am I in those moments when I don't have the crutches, when I don't have the journal, when I don't have the breath work or the yoga mat? Like, who am I, right? When the lights come on and I step onto that floor and it's game time and it's show time, like, how do I show up? And so now that I would say that moment is something I really connect to, because I knew that if I could get through that, I could get through anything. And from that moment forwards, it was like, hey, I'm here, like, let's go, let's play, let's feel alive and see what's possible. So I would say, like, any moment of like big reorganization in my life has been like a big anchor for me. And then now, yeah, it's less about like certain experiences. For me, it's more so about like clearing my nervous system, like really being in my body, really doing the work to like like regulate myself to open my mind with new possibilities. And I would say like that's an everyday practice, and it looks like something different every single day, because I'm not going to do the same thing every single day for the rest of my life. Like,
Yeah.
yes, meditation is great. And yes, like breath work is great. And if I do the same yoga flow every single morning for the rest of my life, like I'll probably like create the same type of pathways in my brain. I like to operate from more of a dynamic, adaptable space. So I like to change things. I like to change things up like every week or every 3 days and be like, what happens if I do this? Like, this is the job of a psychonaut, right? To explore human consciousness and like figure out what's possible. And I like to do that like in a grounded way too, by being like, okay, what if I like just stretch today, and then like also do like this kind of breath work, and then fast for 24 hours, and like let's see what happens there. And like what kind of reflections do I see in my life when I operate from this space? And when I key into these different parts of my body, like how does this influence my relationships, or how does this influence my expression in life? So I like to tune into those things and just like play with it, and it's super fun.
Yeah, I like that. I have a
Mhm.
set routine, and now I'm like thinking to myself, damn, man, maybe I need to create some different pathways here. But
Mhm.
I think it's just for me, I just need the routine to to get going originally. But
Mhm.
I like that idea because like when it comes to going to the gym, I just did it because I was like, I know physiology is important. I just need to go try this, and then now I love it. I literally love going to the gym. I won't miss it when I go to school. I'm like, I can't miss school today, but man, I just want to go get my pump on, bro. But
Mhm.
it changes. It's not even about really the results, or even it just changes the way you think about yourself. It changes your ability to like do shit, for lack of a better terms. Like when you tell your brain, okay, now we're gonna plan this elaborate, complicated day. We got this interview, then we got this podcast, and we got 2 clients after that, blah blah blah. And you got to do some homework, and you need to work on your funnel. Like having that ability to tell my brain to go do it, like I found working out helps out a lot with that because like I've done it and I've done it and done it and get results, and then I build the confidence, and now I have that pathway. So I'm kind of jealous of your multi pathway. I'm thinking to myself, how can I like take a different way to work? You know what I mean? The classic, but that's really interesting because I think that's definitely important too because I find like if I learn my job, once I learn my job, I'm like, okay, what's you got anything else for me? Can I move spots?
Mhm.
Yeah, I think you might be a little bit of the same way. See, I loved that it's time to level up. I just wrote that down because I love it. I don't really have a question about it, but it was one of the quotes in your book. Let's see here. Let's see. Beyond the Mirror and Wake Up. I didn't look too deeply into these, but there was a couple of things in here. Like Beyond the Mirror, you said, I don't know if this was my note, but you said, oh, you're talking about between the stimulus, right, and the response. And I just heard I call him Baba, and I got to quit doing that on podcasts because nobody knows who the hell Baba is. But I got a picture of him right there. But I have a specific clip of meditation of his where he says, it's called meditation in action, and he's like I don't know, I might hit the guy, but there's that little space in there in between, and I thought of you when I read that, and I wonder if we can use the Christian language for this. I wonder if that's really what grace is your ability to cultivate that space and push it wider and wider and wider until there is no reaction. There's just the space. And obviously, we're human. That's never actually going to work for more than 5 seconds or an hour if you're Tropa Rinpoche. But I mean,
Mhm.
dude was chunking sake, so he had his connection. You know what I mean? And you know what? I'm not saying he was an alcoholic, but I know that from my own personal experiences, there was something in that probably that let him touch it a little bit better. You know what I mean? Let him be a little bit more, whatever you want to call that, right? The consciousness of the universe. I like to think of it in that way. But from that perspective, I don't know if you hold the same view, but I think that was a really interesting idea I had. I was like, I wonder if that's like the idea of grace, is that ability to just step into your mind and say, hey, I'm looking at myself and my witness in there, and I'm like, do we really need to do this? Like, do we really need to say this about this person or have this thought or pursue this action, et cetera, et cetera? What do you think about that?
Mm. Yeah, I mean, human nature will always, you know, reorganize into higher levels of existence.
You're my best friend, dude. That's literally my whole theory is the transformation of energy from Big Bang to us. Is like we're literally using universal energy to say, I hate crossing in the rain, and I'm just like, oh, You guys
Yeah,
do those?
why like life wants to find harmony. Life wants to find coherence. And
Connection, yeah.
grace is nothing different. And in and like to answer your question, like in that space between stimulus and response, like in that space lies consciousness. And yeah, the larger we can
Mm-hmm.
have that space, the better. And in that space, like we get to choose, like we're like this is uh Stefano will talk about like, yeah, like cool, like 5D, like beings are great. And also like that shit's kind of boring too, because like how about we just also be humans and we experience things and
Mm-hmm.
test things out instead of just completely living in the land of feeling, what's
Right.
the fun in that if like it's pure ecstasy all the time, then like what
Mm-hmm.
is it even ecstasy then? There's no duality to
Right.
balance it out. And so
Yes, you have
it's
taken
like,
psychedelics. I can tell.
yeah, it's
It's a
like,
universal message. You, as long as you
mhm,
have like a ground level understanding, man, I love that. You're literally reading off my script right now. It's with that, because I asked a question, and I don't want to cut you off, but I know you'll enjoy this. And I call it, I was talking to God, but it was really me talking to the subconscious or whatever the hell you want to call it, the deep conscious, someone that was like, it was just so amazing. And I remember asking, I was like, what happens if I kill myself? Meaning mentally, right? Because I'm sitting on a couch like zonked. I'm not talking about actually doing it. It's just having this thought play. And he was like, do it, or she or it, or do it. And then I did, and I was just like, okay, I'm not me anymore. And I could, and you don't have the attachment when you're on psychedelics. You're just like, oh, that's right, okay. And then I was like, okay, what am I? And it was like, well, you're God. And I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. And then I just wept like crazy. The whole unveiling of that, like the second you said that, I was like, okay, what if I kill God? And he was like, no, you don't want to do that because who would you reference? And I was an industrial engineer, and I was like, oh no shit, we'll never catch it. We'll never pin him down, her down, it down. It's never gonna be let us figure it out in the formula. Anyways, rant over. But you said that, and I was like, man, I knew I connected with this person for a reason because I could just hear it in you.
mhm.
But please, sorry, I know I ruined your thought there, but
No, no,
that's
I
great.
mean, it's as if I had thoughts, like
See what
I'm
I'm
just like
saying? Once you get
doing
to a
the
certain
work,
point,
like here, just like doing the work to be as clear as possible, and then hold space and create space and be space and just show up in the best way that I can. And yeah, I mean, to take it full circle, it's like, the more conscious you can be of those things that you have discovered through your experiences, the more you get to choose like, yeah, I'm going to choose grace right now in this moment. Or like, actually,
mm-hmm,
I'm going to choose anger because like, when's the last time I felt anger? And when's the last time especially as a man, like for men to truly feel anger
mm-hmm,
and process those emotions, it's so strong. And people will say like, no, suppress it, don't be angry. But actually it's sexy. Actually, it's powerful for men to feel their emotions. Actually, it's incredible. And so like we get to choose, what we want to feel and how we want to respond and how we want to show up. And that's the dance, that's the game. And
yeah, it's the dance,
it's
baby.
it's so nice. Yeah.
I think that's really enlightenment is when you realize that you're in the dance and you're not like when, there's 100 different ways to say it, but just the realization that you're like, oh, okay, so now my goal, now I can't hurt anyone in any way ever, or it's hurting myself. That's at least how I feel about it. Like, I'll
Mhm.
still like flick my dog's nose, or like, he's a big shepherd and he just gets wild and messes with the other dogs and just won't leave him alone. And I'd be like, oh no, no, and then finally it's either put him in the cage or just flick his nose, and then he'll be, you know what I mean? And I'm not really hurting him. He's a big shepherd. I can't really spank him. He doesn't feel it. He's got 2 inches of hair. Not that I would just spank him like a kid, but you see my point. And I'll flick him, and I'm like, ah. And then I'll walk upstairs and flick myself, or hit myself wherever I hit him, and it's just like I can't do it anymore. I can't do it. Like I can't kill bugs. I can't do any of that kind of stuff
Yeah.
anymore. It drives me nuts. I literally started a greenhouse in the backyard. I don't know if you see the banana tree. He doesn't like it in here, but he'll be all
Yeah.
right. But it's just that.
Yeah. It's like, it's in a way, these dogs, these insects, these plants, like they are like, depending on people's level of understanding, like they can be seen as a reflection of us.
Yeah.
And so like, however deep we want to go into that, like we can see like, oh, when we do something to the earth, we do something to ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
When we do something to this dog, like we're doing something to ourselves, because this dog like is also here. And without that dog being here, I wouldn't be here. And if I wasn't here, the dog wouldn't be here. And so it's all like a massive co-creation of like this existence, co-created time space, the bridge of science and spirituality, of matter and waves, of particle and things we can't see or feel or taste or touch or smell. And so it's like, yeah, I can see how that, and also that could be looked at, as something like our friend Taylor Conroy says, like, that's some high level empathy right there, to connect with,
that's what I tell people.
to connect with dogs in that way, to connect with insects and plants and animals and humans in that way, to realize like, wow, I'm not only like seeing this person as they are and feeling what they're feeling, but also seeing myself in this, like the eyes of this dog, or seeing myself in the wings of this insect, and like, oh, that I can fly too, so empathy, I think, doesn't have to be so like, oh, this person's in pain, so like I need to connect with their pain. It can also be bliss and ecstasy and like anything else that we want to explore.
Yeah. No, I love that. I think a lot of people I think we forget that we can choose those things as an option, because you're so ingrained in American culture, and like just hearing the word love, instantly we all know what everyone thinks in romantic love, right? It's not. I think that was a question I was trying to formulate before the other day when I was reading your books, but not to lose my train of thought. But man, I had a question I wanted to ask you about that, but I forgot the wording, and the wording was very important. It was cool. I felt like it was going to make me sound really cool and empathetic and interesting. So, but and you talked about quantum physics a little bit already. So this is an interesting thought I had. You talk about quantum physics and how. So, I've been studying manifesting. I've heard a couple people talk about it in really pragmatic ways recently, because I've always been kind of like, but now that I've studied physics a little bit and I understand, like, and you were talking about how this plant is connected to us, and I can't remember your exact wording earlier on when we were talking about when you were laying out like the plants. You're basically alluding to the connection of everything. I wonder if our inability to imagine longer time spans as a human is one of the deepest like issues we have with that consciousness. And what I mean is, like, if you study enough, you will get to the point where you understand. You don't have to study physics. I just bought a Richard Feynman book and looked at the pictures, and I was like, oh wait, and I mean, I studied some of it, but once it got to the math, I don't know how to do that stuff yet, right? I'm in trigonometry, but from that perspective,
yeah, I've done it, and it's not like it helps much either.
Okay, thank you for letting me know. Because I feel like once you know.
I've done the math. I've done all the math and all the physics, and it's like, it's the same concepts, just different ways of the brain to grasp it, right? A more rational thought or like creative thinking. It's all the same.
I'm glad you said that, because I felt the same, but I feel like it's a credential that if I'm going to claim what I'm going to claim, it's nice to have in the back pocket to say, also, I'm a physicist, and people are like, oh, okay. So it's instant monocle, you know what I'm saying? But I wonder if, I don't wonder, I think this is the truth. I think that everything is inevitably and irrevocably connected from the Big Bang on. And I say that because from the trip, and I call it the trip, but the real trip is being human. And you said something really important earlier that I'll touch on right now, because I think you'll enjoy this, is I had a realization during that trip too. It was like, I wouldn't want to be like that the whole time. Like, it was amazing and beautiful and blissful, and it was like being in the pocket of the heart of God, if that was a real thing, and just feeling that immense love so deeply that I could. But eventually, like, I know for a fact I would not want to be there forever, or it would just become eventually my normal, right? And so I just wanted to touch on that, because you talked about duality in that form, and you wouldn't want to be in that state of bliss forever, and is it really bliss at that point? So I thought that was interesting. But yeah, I think from that perspective, like, and I don't know if you listen to the Be Here Now podcast, but there's an episode that really got me, and I used Ram Dass to understand my trip, is why I love the guy so much, because I was really lost from it. I was like, is this the ego tricking me, etc.? I just didn't know what to do with it. And he talks about like leaving vibrations with. He says he's talking about a lecture. And he's like, if you are rude to the ticket lady on your way to the subway to get here to be holy, you know what I mean? He always uses language like we, and the vibration, we're leaving her, or we're leaving us, and he knows on a deep level. You know what I mean? He's so good at sneaking it in. That's why I study him. But do you think that is something that I mean, I think it's valid from the perspective of like, so say I come on here and I was like, yeah, Evan, your ideas are kind of crap. I really resent that I had you on this podcast, and I'm probably not gonna, you know what I mean? That gives you, but you carry that a little bit, and no matter how good you are, unless you're literally Jesus or the Buddha or one of the people that really were sent to master it, it leaves a little bit of a like itch. It's like a little bad vibration. And so I wonder if that disconnection from us being able to understand that, hey, the Earth's been around for a couple billion years, and our little tiny lifespan of 10,000 years as a society, and we're like, well, God gave us this planet so we could just rape and pillage, and you know, I think that's the fundamental disconnection. Is we forget that we're actually this, we're actually the planet in a different vibrational form. And to your point, everything's been transforming, right? And so you think the state of the universe from gas to hydrogen to a star to the exploding. It's like literally, to your point, pure creation. And then 14 billion years later, a couple of monkeys are like, this must have been given to us so we can take more. You know what I mean? It's like, and that's where psychology was created, though, right? Like that's where the real idea of the identity and having to own something and land, and I feel like that was that's the trip. That was one of the things I got from my trip, is like, it was like, no, you're on the trip when you're human. You forgot who you were. Like you forgot where you came from. And I wonder, like, what is the way to judo kick somebody to get them to understand that? That's what the terminology I love. What is the judo move that I can do with my life to maximize the amount of people I get to understand this without force? Because you won't understand it through force. It's an experience, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's a combination of a few things, and like, if thoughts are the language of the brain and feelings are the language of the body, and how we think and how we feel creates our state of being, and that state of being is directly reflected in the life we experience. And if this whole thing called life is like one giant mirror, to who we are and how we think and feel and act, then, when we change, it forces our environment to change. And so in the same sense, like, this computer, this MacBook that's in front of my face right now, like this is a reflection of me in some way, just like you are a reflection of me in some way. So if you were to come in here and be like, hey man, like I really like regret having you in this podcast, like I don't agree with any of your ideas, I would be like, cool, like thank you for sharing this, like let's talk about that. Like because in some way, like what is that going to lead us to? Who knows? But with these expansions and contractions of like, oh, this is the harmony, this is the dance, this is the play, and I would be like, yeah, let's talk about this. Like, what about my ideas are like causing these feelings to come up? Because all feelings are valid, right? And feelings lead to healing. And so for me, it's always about like, yeah, like connecting it back to the grounded essence of who we are and how we are a part of nature and the primal forces of this earth, and not separate from it, and we're all connected in this biotensegrity matrix within ourselves and the environments around us. And why does that matter? And well, maybe just to procreate, maybe healing matters so we can create more evolved humans. Maybe there's like an intelligence inside of us that is constantly in a state of chaos, and like when we're conscious of that, it's like that becomes the game. So what was before the Big Bang? What like this is where we start getting into like some really like philosophical concepts and ideas of like time and like space and like like calculus 3 and like since you're in school, like it's like these topics of physics and mathematics and how it relates to dance and song and ecstasy and what is the interconnectedness of these things. It's really just like humans understanding like at our best ability like what's happening like right now.
Yep. And I think we just have such a tendency as a culture now to like it's that fear of death. And how long do you have? I have probably like 15 more minutes, but I don't want to hold you because we're at an hour.
Yeah, that's good.
But I want to ask you this question, and I think I just lost it. What a bonker! That was such a good question. You're talking about the dance, and rest in peace is that thought.
Yeah, I was talking about like mathematics and calculus and like connecting it to like dance and art and ecstasy and
So just an interesting thought I had is like how wonderful that we get to see that though, right? That was something from the trip too. I was like, what's the point then? I asked, what's the point? this conscious or whatever. And at that point, it was just, I mean, this is like a subjective image, but there was just like a prismatic cube, and it lit up with all the colors, and it was like in space, and it was just a representative image of the metaphor that I'm explaining, but the voice was like, you get to see it. And I was like, holy fuck. Thank you so much. Sorry for cussing like that. I usually don't on the podcast, but that's how much it meant to me. It was like, that is heaven. You get to see. You literally get to see creation. And not only that, we get to live in houses and AC, and we get to stand on the backs of billions of organisms. Like, just think about how many blades of grass have died. Not just now, but over the course of the entire, how many plant and fauna, just to get mammals going. And then how many mammals just to get humans going. That's not different from us. That's us dying so the next portion of us can transform. And I know you understand that, but I just wanted to make sure, I wanted to have that conversation with you because I thought that was something I like talking about. And when people are like, yeah, I understand that, I'm like, okay, cool, I'm not crazy. Because I had a real, like, I was like, man, I might be insane. And Jiddu and Alan and all those people have been in that territory where they were so pivotal and helpful for me. Here, we'll end on this. This is an interesting thing I wrote down. You talked about dis-ease already. If you do the work, life will come. I love that because it's so true. It's so true. But I want to talk about Ascension Culture. Is that something you want to touch on at all? I was just curious. I thought it was interesting language because I know what you're trying to say, but say more.
Yeah, Ascension Culture.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like, you know, the idea that like humans are, like, a lot of people, you know, I've definitely been in this space too, thinking that like, oh, it's my job to like enlighten and like reach this place and like go to like this space that's like beyond myself. Like, and when I get there, then I will understand. And like, once I get there, like, and like, fuck everything that's like in my way of like getting there. Cause like, that's really what matters. And like, humans are so focused on like spiritual enlightenment and awakening, and like depending on who you ask, like our friend Paul Chek, who's done, I think he said, over 50 DMT ceremonies, and like people also who have just, you know, found enlightenment with meditation. And like, really, regardless of whose perspective it is, it's like a lot of times I've been there too, where I'm so focused on like getting to this place that I forget like what's happening like right now,
right,
like inside of me, and what's present with me right now, and in my relationships, and in my bank account, and in my sexuality, and my emotional intelligence. I forget about all that stuff because I'm like, that is the thing that I need and want and desire. And so like nothing else matters until I get there. And I'm like, I observe humans do it, and I know that because I see myself in them, because I've done it too.
Right.
And oh, how beautiful it is when I just rest back into the beautiful present moment of being like, yeah, maybe I'll get there, and like maybe not. And like, I'm not willing to sacrifice like what's happening right now for like this thing that I don't even know if it exists or not. But what I can do is stay connected to the earth, stay connected to something greater, you know, Father Sky or Source or God or whatever people want to call it, and just stay connected to my heart, and then just show up. And yes, I catch visions, and yes, visions are real, and yes, it's only a matter of time until visions come to life, and that's beautiful too. And also, like, I just love crying. I just love like screaming. I love kissing my partner. I love cooking delicious food and just being a fucking human.
Yes, baby.
You know, like,
that's the best
so
part
much.
of it. Don't miss it, guys.
Yeah, so I love it so much that like Ascension Culture has both triggered me and like reminded me like who I am, because it's like, oh yeah, like I did that too, and beautiful, you know, and maybe I'll do it again, and that's cool. That's cool as well.
Right.
And just for right now, I know that I'm connected to my mission, and I'm connected to my environment, you know, and that's really what matters to me, because when the women of this planet feel safe, and when the men of this planet like can provide spaces for people to express, and when we can co-create reality in like beautiful ways, like the human species will continue to evolve in like whatever way it needs to, because children will continue to come onto this planet, and holy shit, they will be intelligent and smart and alive, right? For a lot of us who are doing this work right now. And it will always come back to that, like, you know, I don't know. And some of us who have done a lot of psychedelics, yeah, we've seen the other side, or yeah, we've connected to these things, and maybe we will again. It's not our job to really like know when that is or why or how or anything. It's just like, it all comes back to like, how deeply can we just experience this beautiful moment that we're gifted right here, right now, and just live life from that space.
Yeah, I love that answer, because I think that's kind of the practice of my own life. Is I'll plan my day and my 10-year goals and all that, but at the end of the day, when I don't know how the hell I'm going to get there, and I'm sitting here journaling, I literally would just, like, if I'm stressed out enough about, but not really stress, right? I don't want to say it's stress, but if it's just the anxiousness of stepping into the greatness that I'm assigning myself to, right? I'll just journal out, and I'll just be like, what am I doing? Like, I'll just ask, and I mean, I'll ask God, but clearly I'm not asking the bearded white man, you know that. I want to make that distinction, because I think it's very important that people create their own idea of what that is and experience it, because it doesn't really matter to me the label, but I'll just ask him. I'll just be like, dude, what are we doing here? Like, is this the right way? Like, and then by halfway through it, I'm like, Brad, take a breath. And then I always write this. I say, I'll just take another step. And then I write a little, I finish around that. Like, I'll just keep taking steps, and I know you got the rest of it. And if not, like, I don't want to say I'm ready for death, but I'm not going to be clinging. Like, if I end up a poor beggar who's hungry, like I don't want to work for people anymore who don't, I don't want to progress that ideology and consumeristic culture. I just want to be, to your point, here and now, and I'll get where I'm supposed to go based on my intention, my thoughts, and my actions, right? So that's a good little trifecta that we can end on. Just remember to watch your intentions, your actions, and your thoughts, because if those three things line up, I don't know if you agree, and that's what puts you here and now for me, anyways. I mean, you're gonna have some time where you plan. You're gonna have some time to future look, right? You just have to. But that's what gives you the ability to be here now, because you're not worried about the stuff because you've planned it, right? I don't know if you agree with that, but when you take control and accountability for your life, I've found that I'm just like, yeah, I might not get that job, or I might not get that this or that, but something else will be coming, right? Like, I might have lost a partner, but they just freed up some space. You know what I'm saying? I'm in the gym. You know what I'm saying? But I like that, though, because when you match up the intention, I'm not stressed anymore. I don't have like when we came on, I was anxious, but it was really that excitement, and I'm relabeling that, rewiring it. It's excitement, because I'm stepping into this greatness, and if I fail, I'll fail forward at least, and when I get up, I'll be a couple inches closer. But I just wanted to say that, because I kind of get that from you in terms of like the way you live your life, and I really like that. And that picture is just beautiful. Is that? It just looks so good. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's nice.
I love green. I like green a lot. And there's a bunch of shades. That rust really does well in there. But I'm sure we can talk about that another time. I just really enjoyed hanging out with you. Like, I had this talk with a couple other people at Thought Leader, and that's why I love this company, because I found more people here that understand me and what I'm trying to say, and within a week span that I did my whole 3-year career trying to talk to other philosophers and my friends and people. So I just want to say I really appreciate you for that, and your time. Like, this was so good. I knew it was going to be good, but it was juicy. You started saying some things, and I was like, yeah. It's just like there's like a frequency. It's like, you don't want to call it that, but that's what it is. It's your thoughts get to the point where you're up on top of the mountain and you see over the fog, and you're not thinking separate anymore. You're like, well, how is this going to affect the planet in 100 years, right? So think about the planet in 100 years. But I really appreciate your time, Dr. Evan, and don't forget to pick up all of his books and read them cover to cover, and then write reviews, and watch the video through the end. I'm just kidding. But I will let you go with that, sir, and I really appreciate it. Namaste, my friend. Namaste.
Thank you so much, man. Yeah, thank you for having me on here. I really appreciate it. And yeah, I'm excited to witness you and your greatness, and wherever your career takes you. And let's chat sometime soon.
Yeah, we got some collabs coming in the future. We just gotta, you know what I mean? We just gotta be here and wait for it. It'll come. Yeah. I really would like to